Hey, what's up guys? My name is Michael Westbrook. I am a full-time musician, and depending on the day, that can look very different. Lately, I've been on the road a lot with a group named Crowder as a multi-instrumentalist. Today's video is a continuation of a course that I am releasing here on YouTube. I actually made this a couple of years ago and it's been available for sale, but now I'm moving it over to YouTube and it'll be completely free. This again is part 4. If you haven't seen the earlier parts, there is a link in the description to a playlist where you can check out all the videos. The goal of these videos is to help you create interlocking guitar parts, or parts that work together, whether it's with other guitars or whatever else is going on musically. I created this and made this so that it's super practical, whether you're a beginner or a more advanced player. It just gives you a way to think about guitar parts, think more musically, and write and play parts that are going to work together with everything that's going on. In this specific video, we are taking a look inside of some sessions of demos that I've created for different videos here on YouTube, and just taking a closer look at the parts, seeing how they work together, kind of giving you some real world examples of the things that I talked about in earlier videos. Hope you enjoy and hope it's super helpful for you, and just kind of maybe unlocks some things in your brain to think about guitar parts in a different way. The track you just heard was from my Big Sky video about repairing it. I replaced a couple of pots and the foot switches, and you know, the Big Sky is on all of the parts. So all the parts are super verby. I actually added the reverb later after I tracked the parts. So you'll see in the Pro Tools session there are a lot of reverb tracks that I printed. That was just so I could kind of dial in the sounds a little more after the fact. But we're going to take a listen to kind of the solo section of this song. The rhythm guitars are broken out in some really interesting ways in this one, just to kind of, again, give each one its own kind of signature sound and fill up different parts of the spectrum. So first we've got this really low double part. I think this is probably played on just the low E string with a single note. Here's what that sounds like. All right, and then to complement that, I'm just going to play one. I'm not going to play all of these doubles, and then we'll have each part, one on the right side and one on the left side. You'll be able to hear them a little easier. So then we have another part that's kind of in the mid-range. It's a rhythm part right here. Here's what the two of those sound like together. All right, and then another kind of rhythm part we have are these stabs. Here's what the 3 of those sound like. These stabs obviously are a little cleaner, they're really chimey, and they're high. So right there in our rhythm part, we've got 3 different ranges of parts. We've got a part on our low E string, we've got a part kind of in the middle, and then we've got these chimier high chords that are ringing out throughout the section. And it really just kind of helps differentiate all the parts, and you can kind of, you know, hear them all contributing. Now I'm going to bring in kind of the solo guitar, the melody guitar for this section. And one thing I want to point out is kind of talking about that interlocking part idea, and that this can kind of look different in different types of songs. So this one, there are spaces in the solo, and I feel like when we're thinking about the whole picture, what ends up happening is that our focal point is the solo, right? We're kind of focused on what it's doing. It's probably the loudest in the mix, and it's, you know, it's our main melody. But when there's a space in that melody, then it allows maybe some of our other rhythm parts to poke through. So in one of these spaces where the solo part kind of takes a break or takes a rest and holds out a note, we hear those stab parts, those rhythm parts, those kind of high chimey rhythm parts. Those kind of get a chance to poke through and play something a little more exciting. They kind of have they do a little more right there rather than just outline the chords. And, for me, again, it's like we're passing the ball of the listener's attention, and it just makes things more interesting. We're listening to this part, and then, another part does something, and we're like, oh, what's that over there? And by, thinking about all of these parts in that way, it helps keep it interesting. It helps keep the listener engaged. So right there at the very end, the solo guitar holds out a note, and then that lets you kind of hear or pay more attention to that triplet figure that the rhythm guitars are doing, that bump, 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 bump. Again, we're giving space for different things to come through at different times, and it just makes it sound good. It makes it sound interesting. Now we're going to talk about the demo that you heard at the very beginning of the part 1 video. And we're just going to take a look at the B section on this. I think there's some really interesting things going on. Even though there's only 3 parts, it really demonstrates this concept of interlocking parts. So we've got a rhythm part that's doubled, hard pan left and right. I believe that was a Telly and the Les Paul, which is what I love to do rhythm guitar parts with. I usually don't change the tone all that much. I think on this one, I might have bumped the gain up a little bit on the Telly just to get it more similar to the Les Paul because it's not hitting it as hard. So just so that they're in a similar gain level. But other than that, I didn't change anything other than changing the guitars. And this rhythm part is the part that I laid down first, and then I laid down the melody part, and then I laid down this kind of mid-range picking part. And I wanted to say right here, I don't have all of these parts planned out before I start, I put down the rhythm part, and then I'm trying to figure out, okay, what does this need next? And I feel like these parts do a really good job of demonstrating that interlocking idea. They interlock in a really interesting way, but that's something that I'm creating as I'm going. I'm not really starting with the final picture in my mind, but I am in the habit of creating parts that have space in them so that maybe it's a short note part or a more rhythmic part, but then there are parts where it rests and has a sustained note that holds out. That was definitely the case for this rhythm part, but rather than create a more rhythmic part first and then add some space in different sections, it actually worked the opposite way. It's just big chunky chords, and then I have this part where it kind of goes up a little higher and it gets more rhythmic. Here's what just the rhythm part sounds like. So it kind of has that, that chunky jump kind of deal in there a few times. And what I did, and I'm not necessarily thinking about this all the time, but I'm just in the habit of creating parts like this, is that when I laid down the harmony part, I allowed space in that part for you to hear some of those interesting things that are going on in the rhythm part. Here's what the melody and the rhythm part sound like together. So let's zoom in on this and we can kind of see even more what we're talking about here. So right here, this is our doubled rhythm part right here, guitar 1 and 2. And then guitar 3, this is our melody right here. So you can see kind of this passing the ball, like I mentioned earlier, between these two parts and where the attacks fall and what space they're allowing. So, on our downbeat right here, we've got our rhythm guitar hitting, and then our melody comes in a little later. And then even on this part right here where our rhythm guitar plays the second chord, there's a space here. That's not completely intentional. I think it's more of a subconscious thing, but I'm just allowing these parts to kind of interlock and give space to one another. So we move down further. We've kind of got a similar thing here where it's holding this note out, and then that's allowing this more rhythmic part in the rhythm part to shine through. So we'll play it. Let's back up a little bit. We'll play it from right here. This melody is kind of taking a break, and it allows that chunkier rhythm thing to come through and for you to be able to hear that, for your focus to shift to that. Again, it's all about getting in the habit of creating parts that have space in them. And then when you're layering parts, paying attention to where that space is and creating other parts to fill in that space. So this idea of leaving space for other parts is a huge idea when you're playing songs with vocals, right? You don't necessarily want to play parts that, clash with the vocal or try to take attention away from a vocal. So I think it comes a lot from that, with playing with songwriters and playing with artists and trying to find parts that fit around a vocal that aren't cluttering things up too much. Another super practical tip for giving parts their own space is watching where you have melodies come in and maybe not putting them in on the downbeat. We've got a lot of things happening on the downbeat of this section. We've got that rhythm guitar coming in. There's probably a crash with the drums. The bass is all hitting on the downbeat. So a lot of times it can be really good to start parts not on the downbeat of a measure or on the one. This kind of allows those things that are coming in on the downbeat to have their impact there, and then you can come in with a melody or a part just after that. It just helps to reduce clutter. It helps give everything its own kind of space, not only sonically but rhythmically.